nothing worth achieving is going to happen right away. So you need this resilience and this perseverance to know like, hey, I'm extremely clear on what I want and I have positive expectations that I will do it. I have control over my ability to get this done. And if it's not working, I'm going to work at a different angle. I'm going to keep doing this until I achieve what I want.
You're watching Developing Potential with Diana Keuilian.
Hi, friends. Welcome back. This is episode 50 of this podcast, which means that I've been sitting here every week for almost a full year. And I'm just letting that sink in today. And I'm so grateful to every single one of you who tune in and listen to this content every week. And for just the fact that you're on a self-development journey and that you're allowing me to be part of that. Because every single week we talk about some aspect of self-development. Now, as you know, if you've been watching over the past 50 weeks, I am in graduate school right now. I'm actually almost done. So in a couple of months, I'm going to be finished and I will be an associate marriage and family therapist, which means I will be one step closer to being a licensed therapist. And so over the last year, I've been kind of juggling these two different roles, and I'm still trying to figure it out, right? I've been juggling the role of being an actual therapist in a room, working with clients. And in that role, it's really all about me putting myself and my personal life into a box and putting it away and being available to really tune into the person in front of me. And the client's role is to be vulnerable and to allow me to witness where they are so that we can, help move them towards healing and move them to, through the process of personal development, which just gives me goosebumps even talking about it, being able to be that person for another human, right? To be there as part of their journey, really intimately one-on-one. But then in this role, as I'm trying to grow a podcast. And you might ask well, why? Why are you trying to grow a podcast when you're clearly passionate about, being one-on-one working with clients? And the reason really is that I want to reach more people with this knowledge and with this information and really just the passion that I have to help others develop themselves emotionally, mentally, spiritually, physically, to really just continue to pursue this path of self-development. And it's very personal to me because this is something that I've been on a self-development journey for, more than 2 decades. And this has been really the focus of my life is first in me doing it and me experiencing transformation and, just bringing so much curiosity to learn. Like I read so many books and I'm just immersed in understanding our emotions and our psyche and our physical body, right? Like how can we optimize everything that we are to uncover the radiance that we all have at our core so that we can be more connected to others, we can experience more happiness, more joy, more fulfillment, and more impact in life, right? That's very personal to my journey. And so the reason why I've been, starting this podcast and just every week delivering a message that's on my heart and on my mind, because I want to really extend that call to action and those just action steps and information and hopefully encouragement, right, to a wider audience than just meeting with my clients one-on-one. And they're two very different experiences. And I'm certainly a beginner at both for sure. This is a growth process for me. And I'm starting to gain some competency, specifically in my role as therapist. It's coming faster, probably because I spend hours a week, in the therapy room with my clients, developing myself in that role and understanding how to be more effective and how to show up for my clients in that role. And then here with the podcast, it's going to take longer, and this is, I realized today that my role here with you in a lot of ways is almost the opposite as my role in the therapy room with a client. Because in that scenario, it's on the client to be vulnerable and to share the details of their life and their experience. And that's what moves the therapy forward, right? That's what moves their development. But here in this role, really the success of this podcast and the impact of what I can sit here and share depends on me being able to share my experience with you. And so I'm realizing as I'm, almost 1 year into it, that this is such a different role, that I still have a lot of development to do in it to feel that I can share, more pieces of myself and be more vulnerable in this setting when I'm so trained over here as a therapist to keep everything personal to myself. So this is a journey, and I appreciate that you're on it with me and that you're tuning in. But yeah, just wanted to share a little bit of my thought process around almost having completed the first year of this content and really looking forward to getting to a place where I can deliver the content in a more impactful way as I continue to just show up every week and, articulate my thoughts to you and hopefully share more of myself to feel that safety in this environment, to share more of myself, knowing that in this context, as a podcast, that's really where the impact is going to be felt. All right, so today we are talking about how to achieve anything in life. And there are 2 steps that when I look back over my achievements and Bedros's achievements, I can find these 2 steps, like these 2 golden threads that run through everything we've ever achieved and accomplished. And I realize that at this point, I need to share with you some of my achievements so that I have some credibility, but I do want to let you know it's very uncomfortable for me to share my achievements or to talk about myself in that way. And maybe you've felt like this in your life where you don't want to come across like you're bragging or like you're being arrogant in some way. And so, yeah, little disclaimer, it is uncomfortable for me to talk about my achievements, but there have been many achievements over specifically the past couple of decades. And I'm, one of them that I can really remember vividly was being in college, and I was a distance runner. And I still am part-time a distance runner now. But back in college, that was, I guess you could say that was my coping mechanism. That is how I dealt with the stress and anxiety of moving 2 states away from home and, having high expectations on myself academically and all of these different things, right? That was how I coped, was I would go and run. And sometimes I would run for hours. And I went to college in La Mirada, California. And it's just a really cute little town with lots of neighborhoods and beautiful homes. And I remember that I would go running, and I loved running in the afternoon, when kids had come home from school, and you could, kids would be out playing, and there would be, just specifically, I remember going past houses and hearing the kids practicing their piano in the afternoons. And at the time, I had no idea how I was going to make it in life or how I was going to make money or eventually have a house. But that was one of my biggest goals in my early 20s was one day I want to have just a beautiful home, and I want to have a piano and my kids to learn how to play piano. And I just had this scene that I would see every single day. And it was cemented into my mind. This is one of those big accomplishments that I want. And of course, fast forward to now, and, we have had a beautiful home for several years. And one of my favorite things, my son, who's 18, comes home from work, comes home from school, and he sits down and he plays the piano. And so for me, that's just such a gratifying moment that I get to experience a few times a week of wow, I can't believe that I have this house here in Southern California, and there's a piano, and my son is playing the piano. Another big accomplishment in my life was getting published as an author. And I still have a lot more that I want to accomplish in that realm. But that was one of the ones I knew from a very young age. For whatever reason, I loved books, and I just knew one day I'm going to write books. I'm going to have a bookshelf, and the books are going to have my name on it. And so, I'll never forget the day when my first book showed up at the house, the box from the publisher, and sitting down and opening and looking at this book like, wow, like, okay, I've accomplished that. Okay, so those are two accomplishments that, at the time when I first conceived of this idea, they seemed so far out of reach, almost like they were impossible, right? Like you want this thing, but it's how could you ever achieve it? And there's been several other things over the years that have felt just as out of reach, right? So in doing some reflection and then studying success, I've come up with these 2 steps that are necessary for us to achieve anything. So the first one is to have positive expectations. And so what does that mean? Essentially, that means you have to find a belief within yourself that it is possible. So when I was that college student and I was running past these beautiful homes and listening to the kids sit down and play their piano, in my mind, I was imagining and I was picturing my own home and my own children playing piano music, right? I was creating this narrative in my own mind where I was claiming ownership of this idea that I will one day have a home in Southern California. I will buy a piano and I will have kids who will learn to play and sit down, right? I was creating this belief inside my own mind that this, not only is this possible, that someone like me could eventually have a nice house and could eventually, teach their kids to play piano, but that it would happen. And I think a big part of getting this positive expectation for this crazy goal that you have is repetition. So it's not enough to just one day for 1 hour think, yeah, it's possible, I could do it. It's the repetition, right? And so I would run multiple times a week and I would have this thought multiple times a week, right? And so, with wanting to get published as an author, I would think about it all the time. Like every time I would pick up a book and look at a book, in the back of my mind, I would be like, I'm going to be published one day, right? And so this first step, you have this goal that you want to achieve in your mind. The first step is getting yourself to a place where you 100% believe that you can do it. And so this is called positive expectations. And it's interesting when we look at, the therapy world, this is the number one reason that people get better in therapy is when they come in thinking, I'm going to get better, right? And so positive expectations are incredibly powerful with anything in our life. And so believing that it can happen, and then with time, shifting the belief that it can happen to it will happen. So in order to really utilize the step of positive expectations, we have to have perfect clarity on what it is that we want. And so this goal has to be so crystal clear in your mind, and then that belief that it's 100% possible and 100% it will happen. Right? Well, what will happen? Having complete detail. And that's why using, the theater of our mind and using our imagination to picture it is more powerful than even talking about it. Because when we picture something in our mind, we see all the details, right? We see the details. We feel the emotions of having accomplished it. Like I could feel what it would feel like to come home to one of these beautiful houses. But way before, 2 decades before I had it, I could experience it in my mind. So part of how we can build this positive expectation is having exposure to other people who have done it, right? And this helps us to get over that idea that maybe it's impossible. Like when you meet someone and you know them and they've achieved this huge thing that you want to achieve, all of a sudden, automatically, it feels more possible. Because you're like, well, okay, they're just a person like me, and like they're not perfect, and they've got their quirks like I do. Like, wow, they could do it. That means I could do it. So once you have this goal really crystal clear, let's say if it was, hey, I want to be a homeowner in Southern California, making friends with people who own a home and going over to their house and getting that experience, right? Learning their story of how they were able to purchase the home. And when it comes to, this idea of being published, I knew people who were published before I was published and having conversations with them like, well, how did you do it? right? Like getting their story makes it way more believable that you can do it. Okay, so the second step to achieving anything you want in life is to focus on your locus of control. So locus of control is the degree to which you believe that you have control over the outcome of your life versus external forces being in control. So just think about that for a minute. How much of your life do you believe you had control over versus feeling like things just happen to me, I have to go along with what happens, right? Not feeling this sense of agency to make things happen. And so this one, if it's not naturally installed in you to feel like, hey, things are in my control, I got this, then this step is going to take you a little bit longer. And you're going to have to really intentionally work on it, right? Really intentionally notice when you feel that you have control in life versus when you feel like almost like a victim to circumstance or like forces outside of you are more in control than like you deciding things and then you getting things done. So a sign that this one could be an issue for you would be if you find yourself blaming circumstances or just not taking responsibility for how a certain thing went, right? So it would have been very, very easy for me to have blamed, the home prices in Southern California as to why I could never get a home, right? Anyone here knows like the home prices are really, really high compared to other places in the country. And it could have been, if my locus of control was external, this could have just been one thing that came in and made me say, well, it's out of my hands. The prices are too high, right? Versus when the locus of control is internal, feeling like, okay, that's the price and that's the house I want. So what do I need to do to make sure that I can make enough money to make that happen, right? It's just a difference in perspective. I have control versus I don't have control. Control is outside of me. So this step of really focusing on where your locus of control is vital to the achievement of really any goal in life. And so really paying attention. Do I place all of the responsibility for success inside on me versus putting it outside, right? And so it's such an empowering position to be in when you just decide to believe like everything is within my control. And when I'm trying and I'm not achieving it, it's because I haven't figured out the right way to go about it. It's because I haven't put in enough time. It's because I haven't gotten the right information yet. Everything about having an internal locus of control puts the power within yourself to continue figuring it out, right? And I guess if I were to add a third step to achieving anything that you want in life, it's persistence, because nothing worth achieving is going to happen right away. So you need this resilience and this perseverance to know like, hey, I'm extremely clear on what I want and I have positive expectations that I will do it. I have control over my ability to get this done. And if it's not working, I'm going to work at a different angle. And then that third bonus one, I'm going to keep doing this until I achieve what I want, because nothing is going to come easy. Nothing is going to come quickly. It requires that we just put in the time and put in the work, which brings us back to how this is the 50th episode of this podcast. And every week I'm going to keep showing up and putting in the work to help articulate my message better, to help grow the audience bigger, and to really just put all of my focus on inspiring your self-development journey and hoping to really have some of my passion for self-development rub off on you and for you to just walk away from this content every week feeling empowered, right? Feeling more in touch with your radiance and just the knowledge that you can have a beautiful life and that whatever suffering you're going through, whatever hardships you have, can be made lighter and can get smaller through these steps of self-development. So I hope you appreciated this episode. Thank you for watching, and I will be back next week with episode 51.
Thanks for watching Developing Potential with Diana Keuilian.